Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be fixing a copy of Starshot for N64. It has some nasty looking pins, and more importantly it has a circuit board trace issue that needs to be fixed as well. I'm going to jump right in and get to cleaning up those pins first to make sure I can get good contacts with each for testing. I'm starting with some isopropyl alcohol and Q-tips just to get rid of any dirt and debris left on the pins. After I was done, they weren't looking super shiny, so I broke out the fiberglass pen to buff both sides so the pins can glisten. I've already tested this unit before, and unsurprisingly it never turned on. Just a blank blue screen that, no matter how many times it was seated into the console correctly, didn't display anything. After the pins were looking better, I moved on to inspecting the rest of the board. This white residue around the components is slightly worrisome, but none of the parts look to be damaged in any way. Underneath the ROM chip, there seems to be some corrosion or maybe some dirt buildup on a few of the legs that I was able to scrape away with a dental pick and tweezers. Not sure what that was, but hopefully that doesn't mean the chip is compromised in any way. The legs on all the other parts are still firmly attached and I don't see any major issues, so on to testing the pins. I grabbed a multimeter and put it into continuity mode to search for any broken traces. The front side seemed to be all good, no issues found, and everything tested well. The back side, however, had a problem right away. The pin third from the left didn't have continuity at all. Upon further inspection, it had a little void on the smaller trace above the pin. I'm going to confirm that it has a void by carefully scratching the solder mask away from above and below the defect to test those points again. Those tests of course failed, which confirmed the trace is broken. But now, how do we fix it? I carefully removed more of the solder mask from the trace to reveal all of the copper underneath. This is the first step and preps the area for the patch. For that, I'll be using 30 gauge coated magnet wire. But you can use whatever you have available, like leftover component legs or even a strand from an old wire harness. I just really like magnet wire, not only because it's coated, but also because it's super easy to bend and work with. I laid down some flux on top of the exposed pin and made sure to remove a little coating from the end of the wire before soldering it in place. Then trimmed and bent it to fit the exact location on the trace itself. Now you could just run the wire all the way up to the solder point if you'd like here too, it's really just your preference. I flipped the board around and did the same process to solder in the upper part of the patch and made sure to hold the lower end that I had just completed with tweezers. This ensures it won't pop out of place, and if you put too much heat into a small location, that is a real possibility. Test the patch to make sure it is connected well, which this one is, and move on to protecting it. I'm using some UV activated green solder mask and applied it with a Q-tip to the patch area. I was pretty liberal with this to make sure I coated the entire area. This type of solder mask cures in sunlight, so if you don't have a UV flashlight, just pop it outside for a bit. I left it there for about 10 minutes and this was probably more than enough time. But you can test it by touching it. If it's hardened, you know it's cured. If not, leave it there for a few more minutes and come back. Now to see if it actually fixed the issue. A short reassembly later, and now let's test it in the console. It works great. I'm going to pop this thing open one more time just to give it a good cleaning. The inside isn't bad, but it still has some debris that I'd like to remove, especially on the edges where it's hard to get at when the housing is closed. A little wipe down on the outside with some Windex and a paper towel, and now it's looking much better. I try to avoid the front label as much as possible because the color can and will smudge off, but overall it looks much cleaner than it did before. And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this mini refurbishment and trace repair, and if you're looking for more explanations and how-tos about video game repairs, be sure to check out my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next fix.